A society can survive men who are not happy. It can survive men who are frustrated. It can even survive men whose lives are much smaller than their fantasies. What it cannot survive forever is a growing class of men with no family, no property, no status, no duty, no institution, and no real reason to defend the order around them. The modern West treats this as a collection of personal problems. If men are lonely, they should go to therapy. If they are unmarried, that is individual choice. If they are angry, that is toxic masculinity. If they radicalize, they spend too much time online. But history is less naive than we are. The question of young men was never just personal, it was political. Because men who are not given a place in their own society do not simply disappear. They look for a place somewhere else. And if their own society does not give them a role, somebody else will. There's a strange irony here. Even left-wing revolutionary regimes understood this better than modern Western societies do. They could speak about liberation, equality, and the new human being. They could attack the old family, the old hierarchies, the old morality, and the old bourgeois world. But once revolution became government, the place they gave men in society was surprisingly conservative. Not always in theory, not always in propaganda, but in practice. They still needed men to work, marry, have children, be disciplined, join the army, and come home. Because ideology can dream about liberated individuals. Rule has to produce stable men. And stable men are not produced by slogans. They're produced by obligations. All societies understood this problem. What do you do with men? Because male energy is one of the strongest forces in history, and it lives close to the border between creation and destruction. Bound to duty, family, work, fate, law, and honor, male energy can become one of the greatest creative forces in history. It can build homes, raise children, make art, advance science, defend their people. It can sacrifice itself for the future it may never see. But unbound, the same energy can turn into crime, gangs, sexual violence, plunder, militias, revolutions, and civil war. Civilization does not deny this energy. It does not excuse it. It keeps it on the first side of the line. And historically, societies did this through institutions: marriage, work, property, military service, religion, fatherhood, and honor. Those were not just private choices. They were not just traditional values. They were stabilizing institutions. They gave men a place in the order, a status to earn, a burden to carry, and a reason to care whether that order survived. Men without status and without a clear path to earn respect are politically combustible. If their own society does not integrate them, something else will. The post-war West was one of the most successful systems of mass male integration in modern history. Its stability was not just economic. It gave men a simple deal: get a job, marry, have children, buy a home, join a union, a church, a nation. This was not just a private lifestyle or a personal life choice. It was a social model, a clear path into adulthood, responsibility, and recognized status. If he disciplined himself, worked steadily, married, provided, and stayed, society gave him something in return. He became somebody with status, somebody respectable, a man with a family role to fulfill and a place in the local order. A house was not just property, it was a political anchor. It tied a man to a place, to a neighborhood where repairs mattered, reputation mattered, and even the future value of the street became personal. He may be frustrated, but he usually does not want permanent chaos. He has a debt to pay, a fence to repair, children to raise, and neighbors who know his name. The mortgage might be the most brilliant counter-revolutionary institution the West ever invented. Politically, the post-war West looked liberal, but socially it still rested on older foundations: family, church, nation, military service, male duty, female domesticity, and social shame. Modern people often look back at the social and political stability of that world and wonder where it went. But they forget what produced it. That was what the old package did. It turned male ambition into work, male restlessness into marriage, male pride into provision, male status seeking into responsibility. Men were not just living inside the order. They were invested in its survival. The old order was not male fantasy. It gave man status by domesticating them. He was bound, and that is why he was stable. The male fantasy was not a family father with 2 children, a mortgage, an old car, and a Sunday fence to paint. The fantasy was James Bond. Women, cars, hotels, adventure. But civilizations are not built by James Bonds. They are built by men who come home. There is a loud strain of the manosphere that mistakes male fantasy for tradition. Status without duty, sex without family, movement without roots, masculinity without responsibility. That is not tradition. It is liberal individualism with masculine aesthetics. The modern West may be the first major civilization to treat the mass disorganization of man as a minor problem. That is the historical experiment. The old package has been pulled apart. Adulthood no longer has a clear path. Marriage is no longer the default. Fatherhood no longer gives man automatic status. Work is less stable. Home ownership is out of reach for many. Churches and local communities are weaker. And the male role itself is culturally suspicious. The post-war West still lived off older habits, older loyalties, and older rules. The modern West inherited the peace, then started to distrust the bonds that produced it. Marriage became patriarchy. The father's authority became oppression. Male pride became toxicity. Property became privilege. Duty no longer sounded noble. These were not just old customs. They were tools of integration. Some of the critique was true, but the critique missed the function. Something can be restrictive and still serve a social function. When you dismantle a norm, you do not only dismantle coercion, you also dismantle a path. And telling men that they are free to define themselves is not a replacement. Most men do not build stable identities out of pure choice. They need a way to become useful, respected, needed, and socially recognized. Freedom can remove all constraints, but it does not automatically create status or belonging. So the modern West weakened many of the duties that once gave ordinary men a clear route into adulthood, discipline, and social standing. Then it was surprised when many of them became detached from that order. Not necessarily revolutionary, not necessarily violent, but detached. And detached men are not the same as harmless men. Modern societies like to think social problems disappear with enough growth and comfort. But men are not truly integrated into society by a new sofa. They're integrated by status. Economic comfort can hide the problem for a while, but it cannot give unattached men a place. A man can live through a poorer life if he remains a husband, a father, a worker, a neighbor, and a respected member of his community. As long as his status depends on the order around him, he has a reason to defend it. But a man can have food, a phone, a computer, entertainment, a welfare state, and a roof over his head, and still have no adult role that makes him needed, respected, and socially visible. Men are not radicalized only by poverty. They're radicalized by humiliation. A society cannot pacify men with comfort if it has stripped them of status. It can make them comfortable, nihilistic, and still hungry for adventure. In quiet times, the modern West can afford to ignore these men. It can mock them, moralize about them, treat them as losers, extremists, incels, reactionaries, or men who simply fail to adapt. And for a while, nothing obvious happens. They may be online, cynical, unmarried, propertyless, not always failures, sometimes functional, even successful. But they do not feel that the society around them is theirs. Calm is not the same as loyalty. A society can be quiet because people believe in it, or it can be quiet because nothing has forced them to choose yet. The difference appears in crisis. Economic crisis, a crisis of legitimacy, civil unrest, war, revolution, occupation. A married man with children, a home, a job, debts, reputation, and a place in community has something to lose. His status lives inside the order around him. For him, crisis is usually a threat. He can lose more than things. He can lose his standing, the safety of his family, and the world in which he is somebody. But a man with no status, no property, no family, and no believable path upwards may see crisis differently. For him, conflict is not only danger, it can be opportunity. The old order cracks, the rules change, a path to status opens again. It can offer what normal society did not: a role, brotherhood, discipline, a uniform, an enemy, permission, revenge, and status. This is what it means to be recruitable. Not necessarily radical, not necessarily ideological, not necessarily left or right. Recruitable. Available to whoever can offer the most convincing combination of status, belonging, mission, enemy, and justification. It can begin as an online tribe, then a political movement, an extremist ideology, a religious sect, a gang, a militia, a revolution, or the state itself, if it still knows how to speak to man. This is why democratic numbers can mislead. In a crisis, power is not distributed like opinion. You do not need most men to revolt. You do not need most men to become violent. You do not even need most men to believe in the cause. Revolutions and political violence are made by mobilized minorities, while the majority hesitates, adapts, watches, or quietly decides that the old order is no longer worth defending. And that is when a society discovers the cost of not integrating men. The men it expected to defend the order may not be willing to risk anything for it. They may not join the revolt, but they may no longer stand against it. Some may even watch the humiliation of the old order with a quiet sense that it had it coming. The West may not have a classical youth bulge, too many young men with nowhere to go. It has something stranger, an alienation bulge. Not a surplus of young men, a surplus of unattached men. They may not start the crisis, but if the existing order gives them no role, the crisis will. The question is not whether the West can make men happy. The question is whether it can still integrate them. A society does not need all men to be fulfilled. It does not need all men to live their fantasies. But it cannot afford a large number of men who feel unnecessary, dishonored, and outside the order. Maybe some of the old forms had to change. Some may not return. But they were doing a civilizational job. They gave male energy a place to go. If a society dismantles old values and institutions, it has to build something strong enough to replace them. Not slogans, not therapy, not contempt. The West doesn't have to idolize man. It doesn't have to excuse man, but it does have to integrate them. Men who are given no honorable place in one order become available to the next.